Great. So thanks again for taking the time.
Sure.
Yeah, this is a thrill. You're a great composer. I'm glad. You're blockbuster after blockbuster. You're doing really, really well.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah. I'm curious though. How do you pick your projects?
It's evolved over time. Originally I just wanted to do a movie, So my music got placed in a movie, and I just was like, okay, then it's kind of time went by. Things changed. I started doing independent films, and then I started, really, as one after another kind of came out, then other directors and producers would hear those movies, and then eventually I kind of made my way into doing studio films. And I was kind of along for the ride at a point there. Then I really got into reading scripts and looking at projects way ahead of time. So it's gone completely the other way. So now I select a movie really at the script phase. If there's a project that I like, or if there's something that sounds interesting to me that I could do some interesting music with, and it's a director that I vibe with, then that's something I want to do. But it does get hard. There's a lot of guesswork involved and estimating what might turn out great, especially early on, because typically I get, asked quite in advance now, quite far. So sometimes the movie hasn't even been shot yet.
Okay. Well, you know what? The first time I remember hearing your music, I think it was for Children of Dune.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and Summon the Worms was actually used in the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull trailer.
Yep.
And it totally elevated that trailer. Like it brought it up. Yeah, it was just beautifully placed. I'm curious though, who are some of your musical influences?
I mean, speaking of Indiana Jones, definitely John Williams. What really got me interested in film music. Everything from Raiders and E.T. and Star Wars and you name it. I just was very moved by the complexity of what he wrote and the melodies and how memorable these themes were. Super inspirational. But at the same time, in terms of film composers, I loved Bernard Herrmann very early on, was one of my favorites, and James Horner and Hans and Vangelis, and a big fan of all sorts of kinds of music. I loved, everything from Pink Floyd to Rage Against the Machine and Nine Inch Nails, and loved hip hop, and loved a lot of kind of modern classical composers like John Adams and Krzysztof Penderecki, and then jazz artists Chick Corea and Thelonious, and then even the Count Basie and the older school stuff. So I was all over the map in terms of what I was listening to, I guess, growing up. So that infused itself. All of those ingredients kind of, blended in a way stylistically. So I would, as a kid, I would be fascinated by music, and the thing I would need to do is deconstruct how it was written. That's what I love to do. So I would do everything from, deconstructing, a Rush song, or deconstructing something, by Tiomkin or Bernard Herrmann, even as a pianist, I loved listening to Rachmaninoff, and I loved playing by ear and listening to things deconstructing. So those artists all influenced me, and even the playing, like why I used a lot of rhythmic chordal lower piano is because of Tori Amos, So it would be hard to kind of boil it down to just a few, which it's thousands,
Right.
Thousands of artists.
Now, speaking of artists, I know you have a little bit of a history with the late, great Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah, big time.
I know that some of your scores kind of overlapped at one point.
Many, yeah.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your history, your relationship with the maestro.
Yeah, Jerry and John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith, I was very lucky to know early on in my career, and they both helped me out quite a lot. And, John is the reason, I wouldn't be composing today. I mean, we have the same agent, and we have the same, there's been a lot of crossover, and he's been a great help, and mentor, and an amazing person. Jerry as well, and in the sense that, I met Jerry pretty early on and was shocked that, that there was kind of an interest in what I was doing. And there was something about it that I guess led me to do movies that either Jerry had written, like a movie franchise where Jerry wrote the original movie, for instance. Okay, so I scored, it's crazy how many times this happened. So I, of course, scored Rambo, and I took, that franchise after he passed away, and he did, of course, the original Rambo, First Blood.
Right, all three of them.
All three of them, which are great scores, and then I did Aliens versus Predator. Well, he did the original Alien. And then I did the 100th year anniversary of the Universal Films logo that you hear before every movie. He originally wrote that, and then I did a new version of it, which you now hear to this day.
Right.
And then of course he did The Mummy, and I just did The Mummy, and I mean and of course he did the original Star Trek, and I did Star Trek Enterprise, and there's a lot of like these tie-in things with Jerry.
Game of their lives.
Yeah, I think there was something about, I mean, even beyond the Wild one, which was Timeline, of him originally scoring Timeline, and then I ended up ultimately scoring Timeline.
His final score. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it was one of those things that I was very adamant that I was such a fan that I remember signing a petition of some sort to bring Jerry back on the movie. It was an online thing. And then I got the call to actually score it, which was kind of strange. I was stepping in such big shoes,
Yeah.
And I just wanted to kind of to honor his legacy and do something that would be like a kind of a early 1970s, late 1960s kind of Jerry Goldsmith style score. It's just cool. We had a nice conversation. I remember our last conversation was, I believe it was at, it was like a get together for people that were associated with Star Trek. It was right at the Academy by the Kodak Theater. Anyway, so I think, when Sylvester Stallone was looking for someone to take over the Rambo, franchise, he heard something in my music that he felt was kind of Jerry Goldsmithy or something. and the way I use brass is what he said, especially. And because I'm heavy into brass, and a lot of the scores at the time would use brass as pads and would use them as leads and kind of, have very long chords. And I wrote moving melodies kind of against the grain of what was trending at the time. And Sly really loved that, and so he called me in, and that's kind of how that happened. So I don't know. I'm not sure. It's one of those interesting things. I idolized Jerry like so much, and so it's anytime I can be at all associated with him, it's obviously an honor.
Now, did he write music for Game of Their Lives?
Are you talking about Greatest Game?
Greatest Game, right? Yeah.
Greatest Game ever played. No, he didn't.
Right.
It's interesting. I wrote that whole score. The thing about Jerry. There's an example of a score that's very Jerry-ish. And in the way that I think he was telegraphing in some of his scores, Aaron Copland and that kind of influence,
right?
Which is also an influence of me. So when you hear scores like that are that's kind of like that Americana thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about Jerry is that he never was this one thing. He could do the Americana thing.
Yeah.
He could do avant-garde music. He could do, you know.
That's why I actually prefer him a little bit over John Williams, because he has a little more variety in his
the
scores
range.
and the genres.
Yeah, it is really an amazing.
And the instrumentation too.
Yeah, and the way, and clearly, if you like listen to the score for The Hunted, you know, his influence in terms of what I learned from him listening to scores like Planet of the Apes and whatnot, and kind of very avant-garde use of percussion. Right. That's, you know, I keyed off of that for sure. I mean, all these great composers, it's kind of like what Stephen Hawking said about physicists, is that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, you know, and he wrote a book called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, which is a very cool book, and it's basically how those who came before you paved the way for you to do what you can do, and you just kind of continue the tradition while also striving to make your own mark and use your own voice and develop your own style, which I've tried to, you know. I think it just invariably happens.
Yeah. Now, you obviously collaborate very well with other composers. Another favorite of mine is Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
You worked with him on the second Avengers. What was it like working with Danny?
I mean, Danny, again, there's another one that I, you know, as a kid just growing up listening to Danny, you know, everything from his great scores, his early scores with Tim Burton, you know, Pee-wee's and Batman. But, you know, I saw Oingo Boingo live. And,
nice.
You know, and I loved all of his musicals. And so, yeah, and one of my favorite scores is not my favorite. It's actually a small score called The Simple Plan that he wrote.
Sam Raimi,
Yeah, the Sam Raimi thing. And it was just, I loved the idea of him also kind of doing what I like to do, but also Bernard Herrmann would do very strange ensembles, like, okay, I'm going to have 8 alto flutes and not use the standard instrumentation and that's what, you know, what that score, it's so haunting and amazing. The electric bass and alto flutes and banjo and, you know, whatnot. So when it came to Avengers, you know, I mean, I kind of wish he was on earlier, you know. I mean, you know, it was like the movie. There was so much going on with the movie. There's multiple versions of the movie at the very last, and so he. You guys
were like tag teaming it, right?
Yeah, you know, exactly. We tried to figure out, okay, who's going to do this scene and who's going to do this, but you know, the movie was changing at the end, and. I mean, there's like a lot of amazing parts of the movie that no one will ever see, actually. It's just, you know, I think with a movie that epic, when you keep shooting, you can have a lot of material, and they want, you know, of course they want to cover it all. And so he was kind of there at the very end, and so we were, you know, okay, we're going to record at Abbey Road, we'll do this, and we pretty much kept it all organized. There's a couple things, like I remember I did, it's actually the Vision theme that I wrote, and I think he did it as well on accident. And it's like, and since I was, you know, I was like the original main, you know, composer on earlier on, you know, I would have loved to see even more, like, you know, Danny, kind of like, you know, working as a band. But I did get my chance to kind of have that in a sense, where I felt like, cool, you know, this is great. I got to be kind of, you know, in a kind of, it's almost like being in a band or writing a symphony together or, you know, someone that you idolize. And even though, you know, there wasn't, you know, as much volume maybe as it would have been if we would have started from the beginning. It would have been maybe more 50-50, you know what I mean? But so at the end, there, you know, but it's still, I thought it worked really well, and I loved everything they did and the stuff we did together, and I think it was like a really cool merging of styles too.
Nice. Do you think you'll work with him again?
Oh yeah, I'd love to work with him again. I'd love to do. I actually did at one point. There was we did a live thing where it was me, Danny, Hans, and Giacchino. We did a thing that was really cool. And it was kind of before the recent surge of film score concerts came about. So it'd be fun to do something live. It'd be fun to do a project. I would love to do, a movie or even do like some original a work away from a movie. Look, I would do anything with that guy. So
nice. Well, you know what? I actually did see Zimmer play last year at Radio City in Manhattan, New York City.
Sure.
And it was one of the greatest nights of my life. It was so great seeing him perform. Just even a simple score like Madagascar live. It was just
I thought that too. Yeah, it's amazing. You know, we kind of share a similarity in our shows, and Hans is also someone that I knew very early on in my career, and I never was a part of the remote control group. But I always, look, you know, his music really moves me, and always did, and you know, he's so positive and such a, like, you know, one of the greatest also high concept composers, you know, and you know, his show is really awesome. I mean, right now as we speak, we're creating the new show, which the first show will be in London in a month, of my concert series.
Oh, cool.
And it's got that kind of really epic narrative, take you on a journey kind of thing, as opposed to like kind of it's not really a classical format where you just kind of do one piece and then do another piece. This really has a kind of a whole storyline and a whole, you know, and kind of takes you into the movies that I've scored, but it's just very hard to narrow down. Okay. You know.
When is this, tell us a little bit about the show.
So this is the Philharmonia of London. Okay. It's at Royal Festival Hall in London, and that is on October 25th. It's coming right up. It's going to be full on, you know, full orchestra, choir, big old percussion section, a band, and a big band. Nice. So it's like 1,000 people on stage, I guess.
That's awesome.
You know, and lighting and the whole thing. So we're going to do everything from, you know, Thor and the kind of Iron Man stuff to Crazy Rich Asians to Yellowstone, doing Children of Dune, doing Now You See Me, Expendables, you know, Battle LA, you name it. We're doing, and there's different soloists that are going to sing and play. And a lot of premieres, like, you know, doing things like either more recent things like Power Rangers, but then going back into the catalog, Eagle Eye and Bubba Hotep and Greatest Game Ever Played. And
awesome.
Anyway, so, but yeah, certainly it'll be the first time also incorporating some of the big band music from Crazy Rich Asians into a show that also has Avengers. We're going to be doing Avengers as well.
Is it just in London?
Well, no, it's going to be more than that, but that is the first one, and that's the one that's announced right now, but we're planning on going all over the place with it.
Please come to New York.
Absolutely. So New York is always like, that's right there on the list.
Nice.
And it's wild. It's like a 2-hour concert, just wild. If you love the Hans one, this is definitely up your alley.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much today for your time. This has been great.
Man.
And if you're ever in New York, we have our studio. It's in Massapequa. It's in Long Island. Maybe come down for an in-person interview.
That would be fun. Let's do that before the next when we do the New York concert.
Sounds good. And do I call you Maestro, or how does this work?
Just call me Brian.
All right, Brian. Well, thanks so much.